Hi, and welcome to our first installment of the RightStart Math Level E second edition overview. Remember, we're going to be going through 4 lessons per week. So, were you able to read the tips and comments from Dr. Cotter at the beginning of the book, just before the table of contents? If not, please find the time to do so soon, because it will really help you in your teaching. One item that I really wanted to highlight from that section is number 13 from Roman numeral page 3. There, Dr. Cotter says, the role of the teacher is to encourage thinking by asking questions, not giving answers. Once you have given an answer, thinking usually stops. So remember, let your child have the joy of discovery. For this week, you're going to need your Abacus, the math journal, which is found towards the back of the student workbook. Here's the student workbook, and it is found right here. That's before the warm-ups and after the assessments. That graph paper is really helpful for your kids when they are organizing their work and trying to line up their numbers. That's really important. You're also going to need your math card games book, basic number cards. Those are the cards that have green numbers and their backs have green fractiles. Okay. You will also need corners cards. Those are the multicolored cards. There's 50 of them in a deck, so you're going to need those. You will need your math balance. I'll just show you the top part for right now. And the weights. They look like this. Okay. And your student will need a dry erase board. So just whiteboard that you can write on. Okay. So when I look at the upcoming lessons, I always look at the objectives to see if my student needs to master the concept that we're talking about or to just be introduced to it. So look at lesson 1 and see how it says in the objectives part that you're going to learn or review the term subitizing. But in lesson 2, it says to introduce the math balance. So you notice the difference in the words, to learn or to introduce. So if it says introduce, you're not expecting mastery, right? Or to practice, or those kinds of words, you don't have to expect mastery from your student. To the right of the objectives is your list of materials for this lesson. Now, I just went over all the materials that you're going to need for the whole week, but as you can see here, you have your objectives and your materials. Okay, so back to lesson 1 for now. Notice how the left column on each page is the lesson that we're going to be teaching, and the right column gives the explanations or tips for you, the teacher. Those are the things that I read before the start of class. Might do it over my cup of coffee in the morning or at night before I go to bed. I also prepare all the games that we will play for the week, and I make sure that I know how to play those games. So sometimes I drag my husband in on it and ask him to play. I could play it with an older student. I could play it with my best friend, whatever. I could even play solitaire. I just need to know what are the rules and how is the game going to go. This will save you so much time during your lesson. The first thing that your student will do in this lesson, lesson number 1, is to explore the abacus, how to use it properly, and then how to subitize numbers on it. Do you remember what subitizing means? It means the quick recognition of a quantity without counting. Like this. How many fingers do I have up? 3, right? You didn't count them. You didn't need to. You subitized. You knew right away what that was. So that's the goal that we have for your student, to be able to subitize. Now, I want you to show 7 on your own fingers and then enter 7 on the top row of your abacus. Do you see how your left hand mirrors the blue beads and your right hand mirrors the yellow ones. Okay, that's something that you're going to be pointing out to your students or have your students point out to you. Next, we're learning about two different addition strategies. The first one is called 2 5s, and the second one is make 10. Remember that a strategy helps you to learn a fact or recall a forgotten one. Your student won't need to use these strategies for the rest of his life or all the time. It's just until the facts are learned and for the occasional times when they might forget their facts. Next comes the game addition war. Now remember, using games to practice math is such a beautiful technique. It's really important, especially with this curriculum. The students end up memorizing their facts without realizing it. Just like you would not sit down to memorize a recipe, but instead you would use it enough and therefore memorize it, your student will practice the facts while playing these math card games. And these games should be played frequently so that the facts can be committed to memory. They will understand what's happening with the math facts because of how they're playing the games, and therefore they'll be able to remember them. Also, just like you would not buy a regular game and only play it once, these math card games should be played frequently. As tempting as it may be, don't skip the games. You'll really regret it. In fact, play them more often than the book tells you to. If you don't have the time every day to play a game, make sure someone plays with your students. It could be your spouse, your brother, your sister, another sibling, a cousin, grandparents, it doesn't matter, neighbor, babysitter, whatever it is, somebody needs to be playing the math card games with your student. Or, of course, there are solitaire games, so the student could play by him or herself. Just make sure that they're being played. So let's take a look at the math card games book. We're going to be playing Addition War. That's the first game that's going to be assigned in lesson 1. And the game is A44. So I am going to go, A stands for addition, okay? And I'm going to find A44, which is actually not the page number, but the game number. See how that says Addition War? I highlighted it because you can find a link to that game being played either on video or with an extended blog on our website. And whenever we have one of those games come up, I will leave it in the description, leave the link in the description so that you can find it easily. But if you're searching and want to see if there's a game being demonstrated for you on our website, just go to the search bar on our homepage and type in the letter and the number combination for that game, like A44, and it will come up with if we have a video or a blog about it. Okay, so when you find the game in your book, you should read the directions and follow them along. Don't get caught up in the directions. If they're a little confusing, maybe it's a complicated game, just start playing and you'll figure it out. You'll figure out what works. Okay, let's see. So don't be fooled into thinking that only little kids need the games. Your students really need to play the games. It is probably more important than the lesson. All right, back to our lesson number 1. On the second page, notice that for this game, your student is being asked to keep track of the strategy that could be used to figure out the addition problem. That's the make 10 or 2 5 strategy. If you're playing with your student, ask your child to figure out your totals too. If 2 or more children are playing, have each child figure out their own. Each lesson ends with in conclusion. This section is a quick review of the concepts covered to check for understanding. Sometimes it also explains the concept as a challenge to the student. Now, these first 7 lessons in Level E are review lessons, and they're meant to catch you and your student up to speed with the method and materials that RightStart uses. It is not assumed that your child doesn't know their math. For example, what 6 plus 7 is. Rather, they need to use the materials in order to understand how they work. So we're using simple problems like 6 plus 7 in order to demonstrate the materials. So if your child is a little offended that the material is too easy, you can assure him or her that it's going to get tougher. This is just the introduction and it's to catch you up to speed on the method. Okay, let's move on to lesson 2. Notice the objectives and materials. We will be working with the math balance in a bit, and that is a very fun thing to work with. First, there are warm-up questions this time. Notice how the expected answer is written in parentheses. That's just in case you didn't have your cup of coffee. There could be more than one correct answer, however. If you are not sure whether your child is correct or not, ask, how did you come up with that answer? Or can you show me how that would work on the abacus? Listen to the explanation and decide if it makes sense. For example, the next to last question in the warm-ups is, what strategies can you use to find 8 plus 9? The answer that is given is make 10, because it's the most efficient strategy for this problem. But your child may have said 2 5s, and that would be correct. If she or he only mentions 2 5s, however, and doesn't mention the answer that's in the parentheses, I would ask what else could be used just to make sure that they know that make 10 is an option. If you have not set up your math balance yet, let's do so now. So you have a base. This is the base, okay? And the vertical piece. You're just going to put those two together and give it a little shove. Okay, then you're going to put in the balance arm. I already have the pin in here so that I don't lose it. So tip to you, if you take it apart, stick the pin back in. It's a little tricky to line it up, but I'm sure you can handle it. Go ahead and stick the pin through the back and then through the hole in the math arm, in the balance arm. There, and then through the front hole. And then just put the little cap on it. Okay, so my math balance happens to have come to me very balanced. It doesn't need any extra weights. However, you do have a little baggie with these white weights in them. And if your math balance is not as balanced as mine, you're going to want to slide them on either side here and or here to make them balance. You can put 2 on each side. If it's really off balance, you might have to have 4 on a side. If you're finding it very difficult to make it balance, you could put them up here, okay, and slide it along. All you want to do is set it up so that it is truly balanced, and then tell your students not to touch the white weights, because you don't want to have to keep fixing and fiddling with that. Okay. So you will lead your child to discover how the balance works. Notice how the book says to avoid giving hints. This may be the hardest thing that you've ever done, but it is so important. Even if it seems to be taking all day for your child to get it, let the discovery happen, because once you give the answer, the magic is over, and you really want them to discover how the math balance works. So once your child has figured it out, how to make the balance actually balance with 2 weights and then with 3 weights, and the book tells you exactly what you need to do to lead your child to that discovery, you can move on to making 10. You'll have your student write down the addition equations on the dry erase board. Once all 5 equations are written down, you could then move on to multiplying on the balance. You can continue to follow the directions in the book, and you ask great questions like, why does that work? Or, that's a little lopsided, how can you fix it? These are useful questions to ask, and it gives the child a chance to solidify their understanding. The balance is a very fun tool to use. Encourage your child to practice many different solutions and to take the chance to be wrong, and then figure out how to make it right. Don't forget the in conclusion. It's a good way to check for understanding. In lesson 3, we will be practicing mental addition, and we'll learn a great game, corners. The warm-up is similar to lesson 2. If you think that your student needs a little bit more of these kinds of problems, you can always reuse the ones from yesterday. But don't spend a ton of time on the warm-ups. It's meant to be a fairly quick process. Your student will be entering more than 10 on the Abacus today and learning a new way of naming numbers. Please be persistent in using this math way of naming numbers, as it really does help the children understand quantity and place value. It's only temporary, but it is a vital part of the program. It is okay to use both the traditional name and the math way, but don't skip out on the math way, which is hard for us as adults because it really is kind of like a foreign language. For example, if your student says that the answer to a problem is 31, you should also ask for the math way of saying that number, 3, 10, 1. So before learning how to play the corners game, you will practice mentally adding scores. Let me give you an example. Before teaching with RightStart, if I had been asked to mentally add the numbers 57 plus 46, I would have tried to, in my mind, think, okay, 7 plus 6 is 13, carry the 1. What were those tens? I would have completely lost them in the whole process of remembering what 7 plus 6 is. Okay. Instead, our program teaches your child to use a more efficient and accurate method. We'll say 57, remember the problem is 57 plus 46. 57 plus 40 is 97, plus 3 from the 6 is 100, and another 3 from the 6 is 103. Okay, so when your child is keeping score for the corners game, only the final number is written down after the turn. If my previous score was 85, for example, and I just got 15 points, in my mind I would say 85 plus 10 is 95, plus 5 is 100, and I would write down the 100. This is all explained in the book, but it's just to give you an example of how some people are tempted to do it in their mind with the paper algorithm, and we really don't want that because it's not efficient. So if you'd like to see more about how to play corners, and I highly recommend it, Game A9 can be searched on our website. There is a blog and a video. And don't forget the in conclusion section to sum up the learning from this lesson. For lesson 4, we will be working on subtraction. The warm-up is about addition, and the abacus can be used if necessary. Your student will naturally stop using the abacus when the facts are understood. So please don't stress about when to take it away. Your student knows when it is not needed. In fact, with older children, you may be needing to remind them to use the abacus frequently since they're not used to it. And maybe they think, I don't need it. But in fact, they do need it to solidify the information in their brains. You will also start using the whole part circles or the part whole circles in this lesson. Now, you can draw those on your drawing board, and they certainly don't have to be as big as this, but this is just an example of what it would look like. So these part whole circles are first used and explained with addition, okay? But then we next move on to subtraction. And 3 different strategies are introduced. Spend some time getting to know these strategies. You may wonder why anyone needs to know 3 ways to find an answer. There are at least 2 good reasons for this. Your child may naturally click with a certain strategy, and that becomes the favorite, which is fine. But they can't have a favorite if they weren't given a choice in the first place. Some strategies are more efficient in certain circumstances, more useful in those circumstances. And thirdly, it is good to know that there is more than one way to solve a problem, whether it's in math or in life, right? So take a look at Dr. Cotter's comments about flashcards on the right-hand side of the second page. It's very useful information, and it'll tell you why we don't use flashcards in RightStart. You will be playing Subtraction Bingo this time. It's a very fun game, and it can be played with several people or solo. Make sure you go to our website and search for game S, for subtraction, 24 for more information. The in conclusion today asks your child to explain the 3 different strategies for subtracting. Okay, that's it for our first week. If you run into problems, please don't hesitate to call our customer service team. The number is in the description. They are waiting to help you, and they're very eager and they have lots of experience. So I think you'll have a fun time talking to them and having your questions answered. Have a great week and see you next Sunday for lessons 5 through 8. Thanks. Bye-bye.